Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. We've got a little bit of a different podcast for you today. We're being joined by a minor league player in the Red Sox organization, Ryan Fitzgerald. He's got a kind of a unique story, and we thought he'd be an interesting guest to have on. So we're going to give this a shot with Ryan today and see how it goes. Usually we have coaches on, and today just kind of changing things up a little bit. I'll give you a background on Ryan so you know a little bit about why we had him on and why we think he'd be a good guest for the program. He is a Hinsdale, Illinois native. Moved to Michigan when he was 4, then back to Illinois when he was 11. Went to Creighton University where he was a 2016 graduate. He went undrafted out of Creighton. Played the following season. Played independent ball for the Gary South Shore Railcats of the American Association. The Red Sox picked him up the following season for 2018. He officially signed on May 8th. 2018, played 2018 in the minor league system, played 2019 in high A, was a Carolina League All-Star, posted a .960 fielding percentage as a primary shortstop, slash 271 with a 345 on base percentage, 375 slugging percentage, so had a pretty good year offensively as well, probably his best year at any level really, which is something we'll get into during the podcast. And in 2019, he had such a good season defensively. He won the Red Sox Minor League Defensive Player of the Year award. He was honored with that award at Fenway Park, which had to have been pretty cool. That was also his first trip to Boston. And then in 2020, we are recording this during the quarantine phase. There's still no baseball happening right now, but Ryan did go to. He was in camp, was in spring training. And got to play in some big league games and actually drove in the first run of the 2020 spring training season for the Red Sox in a big league game. So that's kind of a cool little thing on Ryan's resume. But Ryan, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today, and I'm excited to talk with you and just kind of hear more about your story.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on. That's quite incredible research you did there. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I like to start usually with something that stands out from the bio, and for you there are quite a few things that I'd love to talk about with you. But the first thing is just, I know you had a little bit of a down year as a senior. I had a pretty good year as a junior. Then as a senior, you hit 230. Your offensive production dropped off a little bit. You had 289 on base percentage, 321 slugging, a 610 OPS. And you've always been a defensive first guy, but the offense kind of lagged behind a little bit there as a senior, and then you went undrafted. And then the following year, played independent ball. I guess I'd like to kind of start with the offensive side of things and just kind of find out what happened, from junior to senior year. It's something I think is good to talk about because some guys get to that senior year and they feel the pressure of the draft, or they change something in their swing that didn't work, or just kind of ran into bad luck, or whatever it may be. And I'm just kind of curious what happened with you from junior to senior year, if anything, just for your numbers to go down to that point that you saw as a senior.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's something that I used to try to figure out, and the conclusion that I had come to a couple of years ago when I had not gotten drafted, and even when I was going through my senior year. I never really listened to my body much. I kind of was just, whatever the coach told me to do, I did, and I'd go at it 100%. And I never really understood when it was the time to go 100% and when it was the time not to. I was always on the gas pedal 24/7. So my body was trashed my senior year. I started actually in warm-ups. I would count my throws that I would do for a game, that would be between warm-ups, in and out, and then during batting practice when we take ground balls. And, I don't know if you're familiar with how Creighton runs their warm-ups and stuff, but it's pretty crazy. It's very hectic and it's rapid fire. So as a senior, I was the only guy at second base, so I was taking about 120 to 130 throws before every game. And my arm was hanging, and I was popping ibuprofen like they were candy, which I do not recommend at all to anyone. It's very bad for your stomach lining and can lead to some serious problems. But Yeah, I would get into the game, and I remember I can think back to when I was standing in the box and my legs were just shaking from barely being able to hold me up. I was experiencing this extreme fatigue, but I really didn't have a choice. I kept plugging, trying to figure out a way to make it work. I never felt right my senior year. My body never was able to recover, and I also not that I didn't take my recovery seriously, but I didn't understand the importance of getting enough vegetables and getting enough protein to recover. I would drink my protein shake and have a couple veggies here and there, but I think nutrition was another aspect that has really been huge for me. After my college career, something that I was able to audit a little better and take care of myself better. So that was kind of the conclusion I came to was, my body just was not right. And then, there's obviously in, the swing, something I've started to figure out more as I rise through the ranks here. I've met some people that have taught me some things that have changed my career. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I read, I know that as a senior you only had 13 extra base hits, but I've read your scouting report, not the scouting report. I've read a scouting report on you now that you're in the minor leagues, and the scouting report now says that you can drive the ball a little bit, particularly to your pull side. Did that change happen because of a focus more on nutrition, just kind of keeping yourself I guess in better recovered and being closer to 100% every day? Has there been more of a focus on being in the weight room? Because the report still says that you kind of carry a middle infielder body, like they don't expect you to gain a lot of other extra weight, and you're pretty average sized middle infielder, I would say. But has that change in the extra base hit power come from anything in particular? Or just from your approach? Because I've read some things about that too, which I definitely want to get into. But what's been the primary factor in you just being able to drive the ball more from college till now, especially going from metal bat to wood bat?
Yeah, it's tough to pinpoint exactly one thing. There's been so many things that have just been, like I said, life-changing for me. Nutrition obviously is a huge thing. My mom actually just became a certified health nutritionist, so she's been helping me a lot with getting that stuff figured out. But ever since I was a kid, it was always, stay on top of the ball and, level swing, even when I was young, elbow up, all that stuff, and, make sure your swing's level. So, and I was, very coachable, and I think too coachable to an extent where, I just did what I was told. And I never really drove any baseballs because of that. It was always, I was told I was a slap hitter. My coach told me that when I was a junior, that I was a slap hitter. And I ended up, leading my team in home runs that year. And it was really an intent change for me, not necessarily a mechanical thing. It was more of, I'm going to try to hit the baseball hard. I'm not going to try to hit the baseball on the ground. I'm going to try to hit home runs. Especially when I got to indie ball and you got nothing to lose. You realize that, these big league teams aren't looking for a slap hitting middle infielder anymore. Where the game's headed, everyone's going to have to be hitting for power. Everyone's going to have to play everywhere. That's just where it's headed. And I think, when I went to indie ball, I had met a guy, Devin DeYoung, who was coaching for the Windy City Thunderbolts at the time, and I linked up with him, and he really got me started on this path. I call it, the path to mastery, trying to master the swing and the art of hitting. And we got involved with a lot of technology that I really have, taken a liking to in the past few years. We got into more of my body and its mobility and its stability, what I'm deficient in, and we focused on those areas of my swing. But I think mainly it's the intent, understanding that it's okay to hit the baseball in the air, and it's okay to hit a home run and try to hit a home run. I used to be told when I was a kid, hit the line drive, and if you hit a home run, it's a mistake. And I just think that was bad advice for me personally in my swing and in the way my brain tells my body to self-organize. That's really been the big thing, is intent for me.
And I think, some things you said are what a lot of coaches teach. They're what a lot of kids hear. I think that there are a lot of coaches that would say that for young hitters especially, it's, the level swing, trying to hit line drives is probably what you need to do, until you're physically able to hit the ball far enough to, hit it in a gap or hit it over the fence.
Yeah, right. You got to learn to be a hitter before you start getting into this stuff for sure.
Yeah. So with you, I kind of wanted just to, if you would walk us through, what you did, which with Coach DeYoung, who's now in the Red Sox organization as a coach. At the time, you said he was
with the White Sox now.
White Sox.
He
I'm
was
sorry.
with the Red Sox last year. He was with the Red Sox last year. Now he's actually with the White Sox.
Okay.
If the year was happening.
If we had 2020. But I'd like to just know what sort of things that you talked about, and specifically the conversations that you had, the things that you sort of realized, and now what you consider to be, your path that you need to follow as a hitter, and the approach that you need to take, and just what exactly got you to be convinced that was the way to go. Because I'm interested, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people in your situation who are good players, but just as far as having an opportunity to play at the next level, they hit the ball on the ground, too much. And like you said, most organizations are looking for guys in all 8 positions on the field, who can drive a ball, whether it's just in the gap or over the fence. But they're not looking for the slappy, you're left-handed hitter. They're not looking for slappy left-handers much anymore, unless a guy is a really, really elite runner. But can you just talk us through that conversation, or all the conversations that you had with Coach DeYoung, and just sort of how you came to this conclusion that you were going to change your approach and your intent?
Yeah, so I had met him through a teammate of mine in Indy ball, Colin Willis, who ironically enough just got picked up by the Red Sox for this year as well. So we had played together in Indy ball, and now we're both playing for the Red Sox. But he introduced me to Devin DeYoung back after the 2017 season. I had not been picked up by the Red Sox yet, so the off season before 2018, I was working with Devin and Colin Willis, and most of what we had talked about was, if I'm going to play in the show, you're going to have to hit for more power. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're hitting the ball over the fence, but, you're going to have to hit for extra base hits. And then a big thing was, getting my swing off at the right time, not necessarily all the time, being more convicted in certain counts. Obviously, the game dictates on certain jobs that need to be done. Not every at-bat is going to be my at-bat. There are team at-bats, and you have to understand that, obviously. But when it is my at-bat, and the swing is for me, it needs to be with a max intent of trying to drive baseball. So, with getting specific here, but not too specific to where we bore the listeners, we got on force plates, we got on K-vest, we used blast motion. We did a multitude of mobility tests. Devin DeYoung, he ended up introducing me to Justin Stone, who's now the director of hitting for the Chicago Cubs. I still see Stone throughout these past 2 off seasons. But so we went in there and we got on all the technology, and we found that my pelvic turn was actually extremely slow, and that's kind of the first portion of the kinetic chain. In terms of hitting, so everything up the chain had to try to compensate to move quicker, because my pelvis wasn't moving very quick. It was below the range, the expected range for a pro. I think I forget exactly, but I think the numbers are 590 is the minimum on the pro range for what you want your pelvis to turn at. And I was in 400. So we're like, well, what can we do to increase that? And heel connection is an option. Different drills with medicine balls. My posterior chain wasn't really being activated at all, and we found that out through some of the mobility and stability tests we did. Part of the mobility test was the TPI mobility test. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. And Justin Stone had his own test that he did as well, which was cool. So then we got into force plates, and we found that I actually do create a decent amount of torque in my swing through the ground. That has led to a faster swing. And then learning to control that, obviously. You want to keep your direction towards the big part of the field. You don't want to be pulling off. You don't want to be late. You're looking to be to the big part of the field. And if you're early, hopefully you're still on plane with the pitch to pull it. You still got a chance to get the barrel on. And if you're late, hopefully you get your barrel on plane early enough to where you still have a chance to hit that ball the other way. But for me, we found actually this offseason, another guy that Devin introduced me to is Ryan Johansson, who is the minor league assistant hitting coordinator for the White Sox. And he's around here in Chicago, just like Justin Stone. So I spent a lot of time with him this offseason actually as well. And, he's got all the toys of, the force plates and the sensors and the hit tracks and all that stuff. So that stuff was great for me to really learn more about my body and my swing and see what plays. And we even went into my data from last year with the TrackMan, because that tracks all of, every game I played in the minor league last year and the year before even. So we were able to really find specific data about myself. So something, for instance, we found that I hit really well with runners in scoring position last year, and we kind of start thinking, well, why? What was my thought process or approach when I had a runner in scoring position? So I started thinking back and man, what was I thinking? It's well, I had a runner in scoring position, and in most cases it was less than 2 outs. So for me, I'm thinking pull as a lefty. If obviously there's nobody out and I pull a baseball, I either get a hit and score the guy, or I get out and I'm probably moving him over to third. So I'm doing the job, getting him over, having a chance for the next guy to drag him in. So we took that approach throughout the entire offseason. We're like, okay, you hit really well with runners in scoring position, and you absolutely crush baseballs. My average exit velo with runners in scoring position is way higher than my overall average exit velo. Because I'm looking to do damage with runners in scoring position. I'm looking to pull a baseball, which is my strength. So it's really cool to see that through the data, and I never would have known that had I not had that data to track me and then go in and really fine-tune and look at, okay, what approach is working for me? Let's go with that. So yeah, I know that's kind of a lot, but not too specific, hopefully. If you got any questions about that, I can definitely go in more depth.
That was great. I think I like having the conversations about, data and how guys use data to make themselves better. You're on social media enough to know that it's a constant debate on. I know you're not on Twitter as much as you're not as active as on Twitter as you are on Instagram, but the hitting Twitter is something that guys are constantly arguing with one another about this or that, and data is a big thing. I think that most coaches out there that are coaching and that are having success, realize that there's something to be learned from the data. It doesn't need to be everything. You still need to be able to teach guys to hit as opposed to just teaching them to swing. But there's a lot of good data points out there. There's a lot of good, a lot of things you can take from the analysis. And I know Justin, just from I used to actually, when I still coached, that was kind of when Justin Stone started to sort of come on the scene. He spoke the last year I went to the ABCA convention. He spoke, and I went to his breakout session, and so I've known about Justin for a long time and have sort of followed his ascension. So, but I know that just from listening to him, you still have to understand baseball. You have to just you have to do more than just be able to look at data. But I think it's just cool to hear how someone has taken the data and figured out how to make themselves better. If you were to go back in time, when do you think would have been a good time for you to begin looking at this stuff, optimally in your career? I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, maybe freshman, sophomore year of high school was too early, but maybe, being 23 years old was a little bit too late. When would you think would be the good time? And if someone's out there listening to this saying, well, I'd love to have those numbers for my own swing and just sort of start to see where my deficiencies are. When do you think would be a good time for a hitter to look into that? When do you wish you would have done it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's ever a time where it's too soon. I think finding the right coach to understand that technology and the data should be used as a guide rather than an objective. I feel that I have gone on, both ends of the spectrum where I used to be all feel and, I got to feel this and that, where then I went super internalized with data where it was like I'm chasing numbers, and that's not good either. So I feel like I'm in a really good spot in my career where I'm at the happy medium of, okay, here's the data, I'm going to use it as a guide, but here's how I'm going to train, and I can check in 2 weeks and see where we're at. Let's see what, we knew what deficiencies I had. Let's see what's now changed from that. But I would, for me, I think if I had gotten on this, 8th grade, freshman year, I think that would have been optimal for me because I had good hand-eye skills. I had a good swing at. There was one year when I was in, Little League, travel ball, whatever. I think I was 12, and I hit like 14 home runs one year. And, I only played like 45 games or something. So it's still a pretty small sample size. But I was like, I'm a home run hitter. And then you level up to the next level, and I'm like, I can't hit a home run anymore. I can't drive a baseball. So I kind of get discouraged and start going back to, what I felt that I was good at, and that was just making contact. And that's something that I've even struggled with I don't want to say struggle. I hate saying, struggle or, deficiencies. It's kind of, a tough word to say, but I make good contact. My contact rate is above average. I'm actually looking at my sheet right here on my desk. My contact rate is almost at like 60%, and average would be 50. So I'm decently above average on contact, but then you start getting into the decision of something I toiled with this off season was, do I sacrifice a little bit of contact to maybe get a little bit more power, or do I just continue making really good contact and not slug as well? So I know I'm kind of going off topic here of your question, but I think definitely as early as you can, but understanding that you got to find the right person to guide you through it. Because there's no absolutes in anything. Hitting especially, there's never any absolutes. There's many ways to skin the cat, but finding someone who has a good balance of experience, has a good idea of technology, and then I think lastly psychology, understanding people and how different people's brains work, different mental cues for different players. So I think finding the right guy, but as early as possible, I would say.
Yeah, too many people out there, they can put numbers, they can look at numbers and talk to you about numbers, but they don't necessarily know that they know what they're talking about or how to interpret them. So finding the right guy is so important, and it's probably, what a turning point in your career for you to meet Devin DeYoung and kind of get on that path with him. So Ryan, with what you just mentioned, I'd like to talk about it. What is the sweet spot for you as far as, do you just remain a good contact hitter and maybe sacrifice some extra base hits? Or should you sacrifice some contact for some more extra base hits? Like what do you think is optimal from the the numbers that you've analyzed, and kind of where you think what you think helps you to have the best path to the big leagues?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So what we kind of came up with, and we had talked about this at the beginning of the offseason, me and Devin and Johansson, kind of all got together, and we kind of went through, like I said, we went through all my hit tracks data and my TrackMan data. My swing percentage is barely above average. It's like 52%, so it's like 2% above average, which isn't bad, but I would like to lower that. I wouldn't mind being below my swing frequency if I could lower that a little bit, but when I do decide to swing, that I'm going at pitches that I know I can drive. I think that's where we'll find I won't really lose much contact with making better swing decisions. I think will be key for me. And then, like I said, being convicted in certain counts, knowing when it is a good time to do damage. Like I said, the game dictates, there's jobs that need to be done. Sometimes the ground ball is what you need. Sometimes, maybe I need to beat a shift the other way, and I can do that. But, me standing on first base isn't necessarily what's going to get me to the big league if I have an opportunity to drive that same exact pitch. So again, finding the pitches I know I can drive, and making sure I don't miss those. So swing less, but when I do, swing hard. That's kind of what we got to.
Okay, I like that. I mean, that's something that I think is talked about at a lot of levels, and something that speaking of things that, when should you work on this, when should you work on that, that's something that I think hitters at every level should be working on, is trying to identify which pitches they can really handle, which pitches they hit the hardest. No matter whether you're 9 years old or whether you're 29 years old, you want to hit the ball hard. Don't necessarily at the younger levels try to hit the ball, try to hit the fly balls, but even if you're hitting a line drive or a one hopper or whatever, the harder you hit it, obviously the more chance you have of getting a hit. But I think at every level, hitters should be working on, identifying pitches that they like and swinging at those pitches only, and just being more selective. I know that's something that most colleges work on, and something that I think even a lot of major leaguers continue to work on just from year to year, really.
Right. Definitely.
I want to talk a little bit about the Defensive Player of the Year award that you won in 2019. As for the whole minor league system, you were honored at Fenway Park. What was that like for you to experience that at Fenway, to get that award and be there, be at the stadium, kind of like the goal, sort of being right in front of you? What was that like for you, that whole experience?
Yeah, it was really special for me, and obviously for the other players as well. But to go from, in 2016 when I don't get drafted, and I didn't even watch the draft that year, and my parents were, they were watching it, for whatever. They thought I had a shot at getting drafted. I knew I wasn't getting drafted, in 2016, but, the final pick was made in the draft, and I was, sitting at home. I was actually just about to go to the gym, and, both my parents come up to me and they're crying, and I got them both in my arms, one on each shoulder, and they're crying, and we're so sorry. We know this is a dream of yours, and we feel like we failed you. And I can understand where they're coming from, and I almost was laughing, and I'm telling my parents, I'm like, this isn't over. Like, I know I can play, I know I can compete at the highest level. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna do something here. I'm gonna find an independent ball team, and we're gonna make it work. And then to go to that, it's like from the lowest of lows to getting an award at Fenway and having my parents there to see that, and my mom's crying again, right? She's crying when it was bad, and she's crying again when I'm getting this award as I'm walking up the home plate, shaking Alex Cora's hand and accepting my award and standing up on the foul line there. It was just cool to see my parents, honestly. That was really what it was for me, for them to get to experience that and, see Fenway, and get to meet, all the front office people that have been phenomenal, for me in my career throughout the 3 years I've been with the Red Sox. That was the special moment, was just to see them experience it, because they've sacrificed so much for me and helped. I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do today without them. So that was really the cool part, was to see them.
Let's go back to even when you went undrafted in 2016. You did not play independent ball in 16, played in 17. I think there's a misconception out there among players, maybe at the college level, that they just kind of think, well, anybody can play independent ball. Like, if I don't get drafted, I'll just go play independent ball. But it's not quite that easy. Can you talk about just your experience, how you ended up, why you didn't play in 2016, and then how you ended up, finding a spot in 2017. Let's just start there. There's a couple other things I'd like to kind of ask along those lines, but let's just start there.
Definitely. Yeah. So didn't get drafted. Obviously, I was looking for a team in 2016. I had tried out for a couple of teams. I went to an open tryout for the Braves in Iowa. I drove there with my mom and stayed overnight, and we went to this open tryout. And for me, it was a waste of time, but I did really well. It was some high school field, and it was whatever. But they were like, man, you can play. Like, you can really play. I was like, yeah, I know I can. And they're like, but what about the hitting? Like, you don't hit much, do you? And I probably shouldn't have said this, but I told this guy, I was like, F you, man. I turned around, grabbed my stuff. I went to my car, and I was like, Mom, we're going home. I was so frustrated with the entire system, and I knew how hard I had worked. But yeah, that was a funny story that I don't tell. But I had tried out for these independent ball teams, and they said the same thing the Braves out that not that they didn't mention anything about hitting, but they were saying, yeah, man, you can really play. Like, you could definitely play pro, but you don't have any pro experience, so we can't sign you. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, how am I supposed to get pro experience? That's what this is for. And so I keep plugging, and my little brother, he was still playing baseball at the time. He was in high school. He went to I want to say it was like a Perfect Game showcase or some showcase, and my mom brought him there. And my mom, she talks to everybody, and she was talking to a college coach, a D3 college coach at that showcase. I'm still friends with this guy today, but he was talking to my mom, and my mom's like, yeah, I got a son. He just finished up at Creighton University, didn't get drafted. He's looking for a place to play. This guy happened to know Greg Taggart from the Gary South Shore Railcats, and I guess he had played for Taggart, way back when. And he said, yeah, I got a connection. I think they're looking for an infielder. I think they need an infielder. Let me reach out and see. And a couple of days later, I get a call from Greg Taggart, the manager of the Railcats, and they asked me to come out to batting practice. A couple of days later. So yeah, sure, of course. So I go out and I run a 60 and do all this stuff, and then throw across the infield a couple times. They had a couple of arms that I faced in some live BP before the game. They're like, yeah, we'd like to see. Can you come out tomorrow? Yeah, sure. So I come out tomorrow and kind of do the same thing. Kind of take BP with the team, take some ground balls and stuff. And they're like, yeah, we're interested. Just stand by. We've got to see what happens. And by now they got like a month left in their season, so their season is pretty much done. And I'm like, wow, they're probably not going to sign me. Like, obviously, there's just no reason to. So I didn't hear from them till about November, and then I get a call saying, hey, we'd like to offer you a contract for the 2017 season. And I kind of was like, I don't know if I should do it. Like, I don't know if I want to go to Gary, Indiana, right? Gary, Indiana, that's like, that was the murder capital of the USA for a while. I know Chicago is now. I'm from Chicago now, but man, I don't know. But I didn't have a choice, so I said, yeah, sure, I'll sign it. So I signed the contract. My coach had me go down to the Arizona Winter League, which is kind of just a moneymaker, is what it really is. But he wanted me to go down there and just get some reps since I hadn't played after my college season in 2016. He's like, hey, we just want you to get some reps so you're ready, blah, blah, blah. So I paid I think it was like $1,800 to go down there for 3 weeks, and I played in like 16 games. They were 7-inning games, so but the league was open to anybody. If you had money and you felt like you wanted to play, you just come and play. Like, there are people that had never played baseball before that were playing in that league, which is crazy. So I went there, got in a couple reps, and then spring training started up in end of April that year. So I came after I went to the Winter League. That was for 3 weeks in February. I had a couple of months back home, and then spring training started in end of April, and that lasted for another, I think, 3 weeks or something like that. And I crushed it. I'm feeling great. I'm playing great defense. I hit extremely well. I think I was hitting 400 or something. And the average age in that league is 28. Obviously, this is spring training, so it's just a bunch of scrimmage games and stuff. So, but I'm super young and I'm crushing it. And so one day I'm driving home and I get a call and he's like, hey, can you come back? So I turn around and come back and go into his office and all the coaches there, and he goes, well, you made the team. And I kind of look around at the other coaches yeah, no shit, I made the team. Your best player. Well, yeah, of course, right? And I didn't say that, obviously. I'm like, okay. And he goes on and he says, yeah, he's like, man, when we offered you that contract, we were fully intending on cutting you in spring training. We just didn't know, we figured we'd give you a shot, but he's like, we didn't think that you would make the team. And I'm like, at this point, I'm kind of pissed, because I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You offered me a contract with the intention of cutting me. And I was like, okay. I walked out of the office and I'm, driving home. I had about a 45-minute drive home, and I'm just thinking all right, I'm a freshman again. I'm just going to have to work my way up. I'm on the team. I'm probably just going to be a bench player, and I'm just going to have to, take advantage of my opportunities when I get them. So I was like, that's just what it is. I can only control what I can control. And then our first game against the St. Paul Saints in Minnesota, I see my name in the starting lineup, playing short, batting seventh, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I didn't expect to be playing. I'm like, wow, I'm starting. Get out there and there's 17,000 fans. And I'm like, holy
Wow.
cow, this is independent baseball, right? Like, and the St. Paul Saints draw the most fans out of any minor league team anywhere. They always get at least like 10,000 a game, but opening day they had like 17,000, and it was loud. And I'm like, wow, this is independent ball. Like, this is going to be awesome. This is fun. I ended up getting my first hit that game too. I went 1 for 4. I got it off of Mark Hamburger. He's a former big leaguer. Played for, I think, the Rangers, the Phillies maybe. Great guy. You know, he was older, but it was cool to get my first hit off of him. And, you know, they gave me the ball and everything. But, yeah, you know, getting into independent ball, I thought, you know, I played Division I. Like, it's easy, right? No problem. I had a really tough time getting in, especially in the league that I got into. You know, most guys go into the Pacific Association in California or the Frontier League. I know the Frontier and the Can-Am League is now combined, but at the time they weren't. So getting into the American Association was actually a really big deal that I didn't even know of at the time. I just was like, oh, independent ball, like I can play this, right? No big deal. But I mean, all those guys are just fresh out of AA, AAA, and then I think there was even like 5 or 6 big leaguers that were in that league as well. So yeah, for me, it was an unbelievable experience. And I always tell everyone, you know, had I not played independent baseball, I would not be playing today. You know, if I had gotten a free agent contract after my senior year, or had I even been drafted, I wouldn't have met the people that I met. And I don't think my life and my path would be the same. I wouldn't have learned so much, you know, as we've already talked about hitting and approach and stuff like that. So yeah, I think independent ball is great for sure.
Let's just be honest, man. If your mom didn't talk to everybody at the ballpark, you probably would have been working for Edward Jones right now.
You're telling me, I know, and that's what I tell people. It's like, you got to get so dang lucky in this game. Like, if my mom hadn't talked to that guy, where would I be? Like, I'm playing, and I tweet at that guy every year on the day that I got picked up by the Red Sox. I always say, hey, man, thanks for making that phone call. I wouldn't be playing baseball today if it weren't for you, you know?
Unbelievable, just how that stuff happens.
It's crazy. It really is.
The luck involved, and so many, you know, a lot of players have stories like that, whether it's this is how I got to college or, you know, but it's pretty rare, I think, to have somebody who, you know, is playing pro ball, especially affiliated pro ball, because of a phone call that their mom made, or I guess a conversation their mom had, but it's unbelievable.
Correct.
How about, can you walk us through, this is probably the last thing I'll ask you, Ryan, and I'll let you get going, but can you kind of just talk us through a little bit about, you know, just the feeling that you experienced when things started happening with the Red Sox, when they were interested, when they called you? I believe you had to go down. Did they invite you down for a tryout? Is that what happened, or can you just talk us through that and just sort of the feelings that came along with that, and particularly when you got to sign your actual contract?
Yeah, definitely. That was like the pinnacle for me. So yeah, the way it all happened, again, another story being in the right place at the right time. But you know, I had mentioned that, you know, I wasn't sure if I wanted to play in Gary. You know, thank God that was the place that I played in, because my coach had a connection with the Red Sox. He knew a scout, you know, and he knows people with the Red Sox. So he ended up getting me a tryout. You know, they have an independent ball tryout every year, and he got me into this tryout in end of February, or March 1st, I apologize, March 1st of 2018. And actually, ironically enough, I was in Arizona the day before at an Arizona Diamondbacks tryout. So I flew from Arizona back to Chicago, and then the next morning I was on a flight out to Florida, to Fort Myers to try out there. But yeah, I ended up going to that tryout in March, and then I did horrible at that tryout. You know, defensively I was fine, but you know, we faced like live pitching, and I wasn't ready for that. I don't think I hit a ball fair, but I came home, and I was getting ready for spring training with the Railcats, and I went to the stadium. I had my locker already set up with the Railcats. You know, I was there for 2 days. We were facing a couple, you know, live pitching before our spring training started, and I was one of the players that showed up early. And one day I showed up, I, you know, hit live, and, you know, left all my stuff in my locker, and I was driving home, and my independent ball coach calls me, and, you know, hey Fitz, we're gonna need you to come back to the stadium. And I'm like, oh, come on. I got a 45-minute drive back home. And I'm like, I'm a half hour home. I was like, why? Like, what do you need? And he's like, you're gonna have to pack up your locker, bud. He's like, and I'm thinking, oh no, what happened? Like, am I getting traded? And he goes, the Red Sox signed you. And I'm like, it doesn't sound like real at first. I took it like so like professionally in that moment. I was like, okay, like I didn't even understand like the magnitude of it. I was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, you're going to be getting a call from so and so, and they're going to tell you this and that. I couldn't remember what he said after that, but I just knew I was going to be getting a call, and he's saying this and that. And I pulled off to some exit and just parked on the side. And when we hung up, I was like trying to process what he just said, and I was like, he said the Red Sox picked me up, and I just started crying. Like, I just couldn't believe that it happened. I just didn't know what to do. I was like sobbing on the side of the road. I drive by that exit all the time, and I'll always remember that spot where I pulled off and just sat on the side of the road and cried. But I turned around, went back, got a nice big black garbage bag, threw all my stuff in there, and put it in my car, and I drove home. My parents were actually dropping off my little brother at college that day, so I didn't want to call them and tell them over the phone. I wanted to do it in person. So I waited for them to get home, and we were all having dinner, and I told them, I was like, hey guys, I got some information. I'm actually not going to be going back to the Gary Railcats. And both my mom and dad look at me, and they think they were probably thinking the same thing I thought, like, oh, you got traded. Like, they're like, what? Oh, you got traded? Like, where you going? And I was like, Boston Red Sox. And they just dropped. Like, my dad jumps and like almost hits the ceiling, and like it was cool. So yeah, that's another good story I like telling people.
That's amazing, and it's a great story, and you're the right personality to tell it. This is Ryan Fitzgerald, everybody. He's a middle infielder, well, an infielder overall, I guess. Maybe a utility man with the Boston Red Sox in the organization. Played high A last year. Not sure where he would have ended up this year, or if he'll get to, but hopefully you have a chance to play at some point in 2020. I know the minor league season is still up in the air as to whether or not you guys are going to play. It looks like Major League Baseball is trying pretty hard to get something going, but where we stand today, there's nothing firm about that, at least as far as I'm aware. But hopefully we get to see you on the field sooner than later, and I'm sure anybody that listens to this podcast will be following you and your career through the minor leagues. And Ryan, I sincerely hope to be able to meet you in person someday and shake your hand and just talk a little more with you. We probably need to cut this off for right now, but Ryan, very much appreciate you just coming on here and kind of bearing your soul a little bit and telling us your story, which is a great one. So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me on, too. I really enjoyed talking to you. And hopefully if we do have a season, maybe I can get on again and we can talk a little more, kind of update you on what's going on in minor league baseball.
Absolutely. We can do that. And hopefully we'll have another one at some point where you can tell us about your big league debut.
That would be phenomenal. That'd be great.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Good luck to you, the Red Sox organization, and hopefully you can become a regular here on Figure It Out.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.